Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 92, written by user Tennesseanyankee, a story of a Christmas bear, impossibly reanimated. When I was around 13 or 14, in or about 1999, one night I woke up to a bright blue orb of light inside my room. It felt almost like a light wind was ruffling my hair, yet nothing else in my room was being disturbed. This lasted a few moments, but I felt no fear seeing it, only curiosity, as nothing I'd seen before or since was like it. In an instant, it was gone. I was still sitting up in my bed. I laid back down, puzzled, thinking maybe it was a dream of some sort. I rolled onto my side, closed my eyes, when suddenly I heard it coming from the attic space right above my room. I hadn't heard the music in years, but I recognized it well. The tune was emanating from a 1989 Christmas bear upstairs. I listened to it wide-eyed, confused, until it ended after about 20 or 30 seconds. I felt a little creeped out. It was still very early in the morning, and I must have fallen asleep not too long after. The next morning, I opened up the pull-down steps to the attic space. There sit the 1989 Christmas bear. It had a layer of dust as we had moved into the home in 1994, and it had spent its life after and evermore sitting up there. I picked it up and tested pressing the paw and play button. Nothing. I checked the back, but the batteries were long since dead, heavily corroded, and beyond any easy means of removing them to put new batteries in. I've looked over what I remember of that late night, early morning, but the only thing that came close to describing it was ball lightning. But does ball lightning hover in place? Does it give off a breeze and cause my hair to ruffle? Does it suddenly reanimate a bear not played with in 7 or 8 years? I don't believe so. After hearing many of these stories, I think maybe it was a relative visiting me from beyond, and maybe even sensed I was about to write it all off as a very vivid dream, and decided to do something to prove it wasn't a dream. As added info, I'm not entirely aware of who it might have been, but I have a good idea. My grandparents on my father's side died 15 to 19 years before I was born. They died of old age and the rough life that went with growing up in the early 20th century. Rules them out pretty well. My grandparents on my mother's side were still alive, so only one relative comes to mind, and she was also on my mother's side. I was a few years younger when I met her, but the general sense I got from my grandparents was she was long past being lucid, and overall seemed gone, but taken care of in a nursing home a couple states away. She was my great-grandmother. I was never very close to her, but being that I'm the only great-grandchild of hers, there may have been a closeness she felt that I wasn't quite aware of. It's been far too long for my mother to remember who got me the bear originally, but it seemed like a better quality gift than anything I'd seen from my grandmother. I don't mean that in an insulting way, but it is what it is. The timeline also lines up well with when I recall hearing of her passing. Communication wasn't great, still isn't, between my mom and her family. I believe by the time we heard of her passing, she was already buried. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks, but it feels like this happened shortly before we were made aware of her passing. Here's hoping that when I start a family, I can keep better communication with my children and grandchildren. There's no worse feeling than the regret of missed relationships and missed opportunities to know your relatives. And if not, maybe I can stop in to see my descendants one last time before I leave this world the same way I suspect my great-grandmother had. Case Notes, file number 92. What if ball lightning as we describe it is instead as you describe it, loved ones appearing as electrified balls of glowing energy? It even stands to reason that when they're able to bring back to life a little musical bear, if there are electrical fields involved, even without batteries, that could work. Spirits often short out light bulbs, so it fits surprisingly well with what we already know. It's not that outlandish at all. We already have wireless power right now. It's inefficient, but I don't think a spirit would care about electrical efficiency, would they? Case file number 93, written by user imperfectelysium. Oh, a life in a haunted house. Be careful now, or the man without a face might get you. Me and my family have been living in a small cottage, built in 1902, for nearly all of my life. There's always been rumors of various ghosts in the local pub, which dates back to the late 1600s, such as a man who wears a trillbilly hat sat at the bar, a young Victorian girl with a long brown dress who wanders the pub, and a few Roman soldiers on horses that can be heard at early hours. There's never been any mention of anything around the cottages. However, we've always thought there was something in our house. When I was 8 or 9 years old, I shared a room with my younger sister, and I remember very vividly to this day being awoken at around 4 a.m. I thought it was my sister climbing down from the top bunk, to see the body of a man covered in blood and ripped clothes standing in front of me. As I was on the bottom bunk, I only saw from below his neck, and me being absolutely terrified, I hid under my covers nearly straight away and drifted back to sleep. I never saw anything like it since, nor had my sister ever seen anything like it either. Over the years, I kind of associated it with a vivid dream. Skip to a few years ago, my little brother was born, and by this time, we had switched rooms around and now my parents and baby brother were in the room I used to occupy. My little brother has said a couple times now that when he was 2, there was a little boy that crawled on the roof, he meant the ceiling, and also talked about a man called Terry who lives in our house. There is no record of anyone called Terry, nor do we know anyone called Terry. Then today, he told me that sometimes at night, there's a man with no face who likes to hold his hand at night. I asked him who it was, and he just said it was the man with no face. I asked him if he wanted to hold his hand, and he said he didn't. I told him he didn't have to hold his hand, and he was happy with this, and replied, "I wonder if he was woken," which is weird language for a 3-year-old, and then he went back to his toys. I understand that children are more open to paranormal things, and can pick up a lot more than us. I just found it a chilling and interesting experience to share. Case notes, file number 93. It's very true. Children are not only crystal honest in their perception of the world, and freely share those thoughts with us adults, even if it might hurt our feelings. The only exception to this being if they're plotting to get more cookies, of course. Then the lies may flow like water. Did you get the impression of malice from these entities that appeared to you? And now your little brother. From my perspective, it doesn't seem like their intent was harm, because nothing spooky happened besides them appearing. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and if you want to listen to more fascinating stories, there's many more on my channel. I'll see you there.